expect. Okay, well, welcome to February's workshop. If you're new in my world, if you just came across a post or a link about the workshop, and if you're here and you have a camera, I love to talk to faces. So, come on so we can see each other. I just finished saying how I get a little nervous with people that I don't know, but I want to see you. So this is the February workshop on creating wholeness and peace. And every month, again, if this is new for you, I pick a topic that is, I think, important to people, something that people might want to, learn a little bit more about, and it's pertinent to what I do with my clients, obviously. And at the end, if you want to have a conversation with me about doing more work, actually, rather than just having a workshop, but digging in for you, I'm going to invite you to just reach out to me. In fact, I have a little slideshow put together and I have a QR code. Do you guys know what a QR code is?
I have ever seen you guys look at this.
The code, if you're talking in your house, you may want to have your speaker on mute so that we don't all hear what's going on in your house, unless you want to talk. But a QR code, I'm going to show you, and if you wanted to, you could just take your phone, hold it up, and click on the QR code, and then you'll go to my website, you'll go to my calendar, you'll go wherever. And if you can't do that now, when on the recording, you could also do that. So if you wanted to have a conversation with me further, I would love to do that as well. All right, so we're talking about wholeness and peace. And why don't I just bring up my slideshow and definitely have some paper, a journal, a notebook, a couple of loose pieces of paper and a pen so that you can take notes, because I'm going to pose some questions for you to ponder and look at in your life. So again, welcome. I'm Linda Downey. Does anybody want to say anything before we dive in? Okay. All right, let's dive in then. Let me share my screen. Okay. So I hope you all can see this. And if you're on a phone, maybe it's smaller, but creating wholeness and peace. Can those of you, can you see it if you're on it, have something with a screen? Trina, can you see it?
Yeah. Yes, good.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right.
I can see it.
All right. And for those of you who dialed in and don't have a screen, then you can watch, the replay later and just listen through this. This is the QR code. If you wanted to hold your phone up and take a snapshot of it now or at the replay, that will take you everywhere about that you might want to go if you wanted to, like I said, go to the website. But who I am is a transformational health and spiritual coach. So what does that mean? I've really always been in health and wellness my whole life, for 40 years now. And throughout those 40 years, my career and the work that I do has changed. Like when I was in my 20s, it was very much focused on fitness, right? What did people need to do to have a flat stomach by Saturday? That kind of mentality, which we all want when we're in our 20s. But I got my master's in exercise physiology. I was an adjunct professor at a couple of local colleges here in the health and wellness departments. And then my own personal journey, went the way that it went, which included health issues. So here I was, a health and wellness person with a lot of my own health issues, autoimmune, and then also struggles in my life, my personal life, in terms of my relationships, etc. So as I kept going in my own journey, I kept putting myself in opportunities to learn more. I would take courses, I would get more certifications. I became a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I was doing that with people a lot. And that means gut health, liver, detoxing your body, parasites, stool samples, food sensitivity, all that kind of stuff, right? And then I really shifted to wanting to do more of the spiritual work and help people transform their life and how they think and how they feel and their emotions. Because to me, that actually decides how your digestive system works, how well you get rid of toxins, etc. So that's who I am. And feel free to jump in if you have any questions. But as we go into this conversation of wholeness, what I want to say, I'm just going to put a context around it. This is how I see it. It can be uncomfortable. Why is that? Why would a path to wholeness be uncomfortable? And we're going to, in just a second, a couple minutes, we're going to really look at what is wholeness? What do we mean when we say that? But why would it be uncomfortable? Because wholeness is a good thing, right? To be whole is to know all the parts of you, to feel like there's no part of you that's broken. I'll just say it for there right now. So if I'm working my way to get to that place, what's uncomfortable about it is I'm going to have to release and let go of some ways that I see myself. And there may be ways that I have seen myself my whole life. They may feel really, really concrete, like this is how I am. But what we look at is maybe not. Maybe it's not how I am. Maybe it's just how I've learned to be in this world and in the life that I've had. So I have to give some of that up, and that can be uncomfortable. That's what I mean by uncomfortable. Okay. But when we are willing to do that, so when you're willing to lead yourself through paths or on pathways that are uncomfortable, now you show up as a whole different leader for your children, for your family, for your extended family and your community. And I really believe, take a second, I would love to, I can only really see Trina. So if I say show of hands, I can only see you, Trina, but jump in. I would love to know if that resonates with you, this statement here that women are the hub of their homes. Women, I really see us as the hub of our home, our family. As we go, so goes those around us. Our partners, our children, our extended family really get a lot of their signals from the women who are showing up as leaders. So the more you can lead yourself down uncomfortable paths, the more you give the people around you the permission and the capacity to do the same. And I don't know about you, but for me, that means my children. There's nothing more important to me if you have children than creating the best example for them to learn from. I have two children and my daughter has passed, which leaves my son. And there, especially now having lost a child, he's more precious to me than anything. So I'm always looking at how what would he think of me with this decision? How do I show up in the way that I'm being? And the more that he can look at his mother and be like, wow, she's handling that. Wow, she's okay with this. Wow, she landed on her feet. I give an example to him. I also am showing him perhaps the type of woman he would like to find as a partner in his life. So all of that's happening, in my opinion. Do you guys resonate with that? That we're the hub of our community? I certainly feel like we do most of the work. Just saying. Okay, so as I said, we were going to talk about wholeness. What does it mean to you? So I gave a couple of sentences that wholeness is um, being in touch with and willing to look at and know yourself, all the parts of you. So the parts of you that didn't do so great, the parts of you that maybe felt like you failed, the parts of you that you've been afraid of, where you've been fearful, not seeing yourself as broken. So I didn't want to define it by a not, right? Not this. I wanted to first say what I think it is, but I definitely think it also is not seeing or feeling broken inside, like something's wrong with me. I'm missing some piece that I think other people have, but I didn't get it. What does wholeness mean to you? Does anybody want to like add to that? Because it's so much more interesting of a workshop when it's not just me talking. Anybody have anything they want to share? Okay. All right. Well, if you disagree with that definition of wholeness, then certainly let me know. But the title of this workshop is Wholeness and Peace. So here's the thing. If you don't feel whole, if you feel like there's a part of you broken, if you're not fully connected to all the parts of yourself, if you don't know how to generate joy from inside of you, which is a little bit different than wholeness, but to me, they're very much partners in the whole experience, you won't be able to have peace. Peace is actually the result of restoring wholeness to yourself and in your life. Peace is like the outcome. So if we're looking for like, I want to go find peace, but yet I think there's something wrong with me. I just want peace in my life, but I feel like I've made some terrible mistakes and I can't forgive myself. I want peace in my life, but I keep doing things for other people. I keep making everybody else happy. There's no access to peace when you're doing those things. The peace shows up as a result of. So you can't go and create peace separately without doing this. Okay? So, how do we lose our wholeness? Because here's what I want to assert to you. And again, if you disagree or you have a different perspective, I would love, just chime in and say, hold on, this is what I think. But I believe that when we are born, we come into this life and we feel pretty whole as brand new babies. We feel like we deserve everybody's attention. We have no problem screaming if something bothers us, if something hurts, if we want something. We have no problem taking it if we want it. So we're born with a sense of wholeness and a sense of self, but somewhere we lose it. And where does that happen? So I'm going to say that it happens when we give our authority over to others, and we're going to look at that first. We're going to look at a couple of places in your life, or ways, let me say that, ways where that might happen. It happens in generational messaging. So we're born into the families that we're born into. And whatever our specific families believe, pass down from generation to generation, we get as an automatic without even having had any life experience. We're going to start hearing that messaging as a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. So, messaging that we inherit based on our culture and our family's experiences. And then there's our own, I just put this in here, our own itty bitty shitty committee, which up in here, our itty bitty shitty committee, which is all to ourselves, our own ways that we beat ourselves up and that we create messaging for ourselves. So we're going to look at those kind of separately. We're going to look at the generational messaging, and then we're going to look at the itty bitty shitty committee messaging. All right. But I want to go through some of the generational messaging with you. So here's how I understand it and how I've learned it in different trainings that I've had. If you look throughout history, look at the role of women in particular, right? Ways that we've had to be and had to cope for thousands of years because of the kinds of societies that we live in. So I'm going to give you 5 typical energies or ways that we automatically get passed from our mothers and our grandmothers and all the way down, even if somebody's from the Middle East, somebody else is from, Western Europe, somebody else is an indigenous person. Not that I know every single culture on the planet, but most cultures, not all, but most have some form of these. So you probably will resonate with, I think, at least some of them. So the first one is, as women, historically throughout thousands of years, we've had to give first. We had to give first in order to get something back, in order to be safe, because inherently as women, we were not valued just for who we are, just for being a human being, right? Go back thousands of years in many cultures, women did not have the control of their own fate. Their fathers and families decided their fate for them. Their husbands decided their fate for them. You know, even if you look at like King Henry or Queen Anne, what did you guys ever see the movie Anne of Boleyn about the Boleyn girls, which was about Anne of Boleyn who married King Henry? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Anne of Boleyn was Anne who was beheaded by King Henry, and whatever that story was, I don't need to go into. But when you read, I read the book, and then they had a movie about it, historical fiction it was, and it was all about how the women had to make sure that they gave first so that their husbands valued them, which will tie into the next one I'm going to talk about. But giving first. So we're like kind of programmed. I got to give first. I got to make sure that I give something so that I get something back that makes me feel safe. It may sound like when you hear the words now in 2024, like we don't live that way, but actually a lot of us do have some version of that. And we definitely have it like in our nervous system, in our bodies, because it was that way for thousands of years. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, years ago, people were treated, as property,
Absolutely.
and disobedience or the hint of disobedience was could be treated rather cruelly. So
Absolutely.
there's something that's just wired there.
Right. Absolutely. So that's what I'm speaking to. And I'm trying to break it down from that general concept to some very specific places that you can look in your life, because if you have this going on, it's going to suck away at your sense of wholeness. So the first one is, do I always give first? Am I always looking to sacrifice myself and give first so that I get something? I get acknowledgement, I get taken care of, I get something back, I feel safe in some way. So that's a generational messaging. We might also have had that right in our own household, in our own lifetime, but right now we're looking at it as a generational thing. Okay. The second one is usefulness. I need to show up as useful so that people keep me around. Again, as women, go back thousands of years. The woman she better produce children, right? That's was happening with King Henry. The queen better produce children, and she better produce a son. Now, we all know now that the sex of a baby is determined by the sperm. So it's up to him whether there's a son produced or not. But women, oh, you didn't produce me a son, you're out. I need the next one coming in. So, how useful are you? We didn't have any, as women, we didn't have any ownership of our possessions, of our life. Other people owned us, our families and our husbands. So we didn't have a lot of legal standing. So what we needed to do was make ourselves useful. And yes, by having a baby, but also by, if you could create a relationship, especially if your husband was a man of stature, if you could create a relationship where he leaned on you and he needed you. So whether it was you were the one that nurtured him when he came home from a hard day, if he, was out at battle, let's go back a couple, 1,000 years, and you were the one that was there waiting to make him feel better, you were useful. Even if you didn't feel like it, you made yourself useful so you could keep your position, your status, and your safety. The third one, before I keep going, so I want you to look at where in my life, with the first one, where in my life do I give first? Automatically, all the time, I give first, and then I hope I get something back. I'm going to add on to that even. We're expecting something back, and when we don't get it, we're a little bit annoyed or resentful. Where is that showing up in your life? The giving first as in order to. Because it's when we're doing that as in order to, it's not a true expression of who we are. It's this automatic wiring. You can't be whole for yourself if you're doing something that's not a true expression of yourself. You can't be. And then you can't have peace either, right? So where is giving first showing up? Where is being useful showing up? I don't think I can do it on my own without his help. So I'm going to make sure I'm really useful. Or maybe not his help. Maybe it's in some other way, not just that primary relationship. But you have a sense of, I need to make myself useful. Where is that showing up? You don't have to say it out loud, but on your paper, look at your job. Look in your family of origin with your parents, with your siblings, maybe with your kids now if they're grown. If you're trying to make sure you're useful so they keep visiting you. The next one is indetermination. We didn't have the capacity as women to determine our own fate. We didn't have the ability to decide on our path. I want to become a doctor. No, I'd rather become a comedian. So other people, if we were even allowed to have a path like that, where we could get a skill or earn an income, a lot of times we weren't even allowed to. And if we did earn an income, it wasn't ours to keep. It went to our husband or our father, right? So again, this is not happening, not in 2024, but even in my lifetime, I remember. So I'm going to be 60 on my next birthday. So I remember a time, if you're around my age or older, you might remember even better, when you could not go for a credit card without having a man sign for you. That's in my lifetime. So it's not that far-fetched that we did not have the ability to make decisions for ourselves, to decide our path, right? So it was very indeterminate. We had other people determining our fate for us. So where has that shown up in your life? If you look going back, like I had a client last summer who was post-divorce. She was, happily on the other side of divorce, but she talked about how before she got married, she knew she didn't want to marry him. But her parents and her mother, in particular, her mother, kind of like just steamrolled her right through it because he was the catch. He was the, hey Kathy, he was the right guy. And then, well, the wedding's planned, so don't back out now because it's 3 months away. So sacrifice the whole rest of your life because something is planned 3 months from now, right? Is pretty much the message. But where did you not get to make the choices, or where did you allow other people to make the choices for you in your job, in who you dated? It might be religious authorities. It might be your husband now. I don't want you working. I want you home with the kids. I don't want you home. You better go out and work. And I don't want it all on me to earn the money. Either way, right? So obviously, if it's a partnership and a conversation and you're on board and you're aligned with the path, that's great. But a lot of times historically, it didn't matter whether we were or not. Okay, the next one is conformity. These all kind of blend in with each other. They're different versions of a very similar theme, but they're specific. So conformity is when, or being nonconformist is operating outside the rules of society. So if you're not conforming to what society says, so for, most of history, it was you stay home and take care of the kids. So at a time years ago when it was less common for women to work, you were the one who worked. while everybody else was a stay-at-home mom. That's not typically the case anymore. But whatever it is, I'm just picking examples. If society says this is what it's supposed to look like, it was not safe to go outside the rules of society, especially if you were a woman. Back in for hundreds of years, it wasn't safe for a man either, but especially if you were not a woman. I think of all of the this just popped into my head, like the different movies, like do you remember, was it Barbara Streisand, was it Yentl, when she cuts her hair and she pretends she's a man? Did you see that movie with Barbara Streisand? That's one. Or Mulan, the Disney movie, where she wants to go fight in place of her father because her father's old. So she cuts her hair and pretends she's a boy. But anywhere, you can see that different cultures, you had to conform with what was expected of women. And then the last one is interdependence. And I'm not talking about, I have a different concept of interdependence in terms of relationships and being independent, codependent, or interdependent in the middle. But this is interdependence in terms of society and women's roles. And that women were not allowed to assert their individual authority for themselves, even in their own household. Even if they had an opinion on how to raise the kids, the father or the husband had the final say. No, we're not doing that, or you better do this, right? So even asserting individual authority wasn't allowed. So we had to find a way to be interdependent and give some of our authority over so that we were safe. So out of those 5 areas, were you able to identify anything that's showing up in your life as like an automatic, just was always there? Maybe you saw your mom live that way. Maybe you see girlfriends, but you see it or have a sense that it's still present even in 2024. Anybody? No, you don't see it. None of this is happening in your life ever. Okay, well then I guess it's time to go to the itty bitty shitty committee. If you don't have any generational messaging, we'll go to what's going on in your own head for yourself. How's that? Okay, so here's what I want you to consider. There's 2 versions of you. There's the one version that gets up in the morning and just wants to go back to bed, that feels like, why am I bothering? That version of you that is happy to give up, would pull the covers over her head every day of her life. And then there's a second version of you that is fully lit up and fully loving what you're doing and fully loving your life. Maybe you haven't noticed that second version of you in a long time. I don't know. But think back to maybe even childhood, when you were a version of you that was powerful, you just went and expressed yourself. I want to do this, let me do that. You were fully like cracking up, having a good time. Think about that version of you. Can you guys remember a time in your life when that was you?
Linda, I can see how everything that you said previously is generational, and doing the
Oh,
work, looking back
yeah.
and connected. It's like the roots on a tree, and the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree is a saying that's 100% true, and only we can change that if we want to.
Yeah. Thank you, Donna. Yeah. So what you're saying is those other things that I was talking about, like throughout history, you have a sense that you've seen that in your life?
Oh, 100%. I see it now. I could not see it before I started this journey with you, but I see it. It's kind of scary, but I can see it 100% now.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the way
Okay.
back to my great 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 grandmother and the research and the documentation of what she went through, and oh yeah, I see it all. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if you look at what our moms and our grandmoms did. Now, my mother died when I was 4, so I don't have a sense of her really at all. I know the messaging that I got, from my father and my family, but not her specifically. But I've had a lot of clients who, when we start to dig in and pull back the curtain, and if you remember at the beginning of this conversation, I said, sometimes the path to wholeness is uncomfortable. This would be one of those times, pulling back the
Yeah.
curtain and going, yeah, my mother was always running
Yep.
around taking care of my father. Didn't seem like any big deal. And I'm not saying it's bad or a big deal, but as a little girl, when you're watching that, you learn that's what you're supposed to do. And then
Yep.
wonder why, when you're 40 and 50 and 60 years old, you don't feel whole in yourself. You don't feel whole because you didn't learn how to do that for you. You learned how to do it for the other people. So then
No,
you're,
you have to be the rock for the family. You've got to be the rock for the family because you're the, yeah, I get it.
yes. And that's why I said, we are the hub of the household, as we go, so goes everybody else. So we either keep passing these kinds of messages on and we keep demonstrating these behaviors so that our daughters and our sons have the same expectations, or we, dare to non-conform, right? That was one of the ones, right? Not conform. So we dare to not conform and actually heal that and say, look, yeah, maybe I'm not going to show up here as a blanket caregiver, but I'm actually going to be joyful and whole and at peace. And then people will see, I really like that version of you, whole and joyful at peace. Do I miss being waited on and having you take care of me and nurture me all the time? Sure, maybe. But I really like this version of you. I'm just really simplifying it, like in that little context right there. But we continue to pass these things down. That was really the point of, what did you see from your mom, your grandmother, your aunts? What are you doing in your own life or have done? What do your children see? Generational healing. Okay. So thank you, Donna, for just confirming that, because I did have a moment of, oh, I guess everybody here doesn't have to deal with that. These ladies rock. So thank you. But back to the 2 versions of you. So we've got the version that says, I don't want to get out of bed today. This is too hard. I just want to burst into tears every other minute because life feels hard and nobody's getting me. There's that version. And then there's the version of you when you're like fully expressing yourself, you're cracking up, you're connected and related to people, you feel you're not worried about how you look. Am I being judged? Am I coming across okay? Now, you may not have experienced that version of you for the last 55 years, but there was a place somewhere where that was the version of you that was showing up in the world. Are you with me? Can you buy that?
Yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
ma'am.
Okay,
Definitely.
great. So, who were you when you were the truth of you? Really the truth, without worrying, how do I look? Are people judging me? Am I saying the right thing? Do I look fat in this outfit? Whatever. Who were you when you're free without constraint, just like being present in the moment? When you're feeling fully self-expressed, like this little girl. And again, you see lots of examples of it in children until they get the messaging to stop. But you're not concerned if you look okay. You're not concerned if anybody's judging you. You've got your Easter dress on and you're jumping in the mud because you don't care. Because jumping in the mud is fun. It's what you want to do, right? when you were impervious to other people's opinions. You just trusted yourself. You know, you give a kid a coloring book and they're coloring and they're going outside the lines and you go, oh, honey, try it. See if you can stay in the line. And they're like, no, I don't care about the line. I want to color over here. Okay, great. Go color outside the lines. They don't care. Meanwhile, we're trying to teach them, no, 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 you're supposed to stay in the lines. But there was a time when we didn't care about that. It may seem so far long ago that it's really foggy. Maybe you've had glimpses throughout different moments of your life. How about that? Anybody have an opinion or a comment about that? Like, I don't even remember feeling this way, or I have felt this way, really kind of expressing my truth, but it's been a while. Tell me where you're at.
Those days were far and few in between. It was always, you must conform to this way. This is the way to do it. And you're not allowed. But then when you venture you away from that and you realize that you do have a life of your own and you can do what you want to, it's like a ray of sunshine. And you go skipping down the street just full of joy. And then all of that comes crashing down again. But you persevere and pick up and go back and do what you know to do, which is not living your authentic self.
Yeah. I think of like when my son was a little boy, and like even in kindergarten, just telling him, you have to do this because that's what you're supposed to do. And he'd be like, why? I wish I could think of a specific example, because those of you who have had kids, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You have your own examples of, you know, when kids are like, well, why? And you're like, well, because that's what we do. Like there's no even better answer than, well, that's what we do. So they learn to, okay, I guess what I think and feel isn't so right or so important. So as I said, go back to when you were younger. You don't have to say it out loud, but see if you can remember a time in your life. Maybe it was a day in kindergarten when, you know, you did something great in class and everybody clapped for you. Or, you know, when like, maybe it's this, you know, in those younger grades, when it's somebody's birthday, in my son's school, they did this. They would have, like in first grade, the teacher would make a big giant poster and everybody would go up and say one great thing about the kid for their birthday. And then it would stay up all day, right? So that, and then they brought it home. So the kid would see everything that was great about him. They did that, I remember, I think it was kindergarten, maybe first grade. And like you just walk around all day like, you know, you're the best thing ever. Like that kind of feeling. I think for most of us, we lost it after kindergarten, right? Like it got chipped away so consistently that it's probably been since then. Here's how that happens. So you're going along as a new baby, a 1-year-old, a toddler, you're fully expressing yourself. The world is yours to take. I want this, give me that. Now I'm upset. I'm going to throw myself on the floor. Oh, I'm done being upset. Now I'm going to stand up again, like that. And then something happens. Something happens. If anybody is courageous enough to share if they have a memory where something happens, I'd love to hear it because it'll be helpful. Otherwise, I'll just draw from different, you know, my life or client lives that I've had. But you're going along like that and something happens, bam.
And you're being asked to conform in some way to
Yeah,
some
like
written or unwritten rule that behavior or activity is not acceptable, and you're modeling.
yeah, well, it might be that, or it might just be like I had a client who had she was an only child, and then when she was 3, she had a baby brother born. And so she was like, up until I was 3, the world was my oyster. Like I had my parents' attention every moment and they doted on me and I could sit on this one's lap and then that one's lap. And then I had a baby brother. That was her bam. What happened was this new baby's brought into the house. And all of a sudden, the world that she thought was totally hers, because the children just think the world is for me, it changed. And now it wasn't just for her. So for her, that was the what happened. Her little brother was born and it changed her world. So it wasn't even like somebody said a specific thing, but something happened. It might be for me, my mother died when I was 4. That was my something happened. I had a few of them. I had more than one something happened. I had circles all over the place. You maybe did too. But my mother dying was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in that moment, when something happened, we have the thing that happened, and then we decided something about ourselves. So if you can see these pictures, what happened is just what happened. It's a bouquet of flowers. But we decide something, and now those flowers are pretty dead looking. It changes the whole thing. So for my client who got a baby brother, in that moment, what she made it mean, what she decided in her head was, my parents don't love me. If they love, why would they bring home another baby? If I'm the cat's meow, who needs another baby? I must not be good. I must not be good, and they must not love me. Remember, I said the path to wholeness can be uncomfortable, but it's worth it if you're willing to. Like, this is how I look at it. Like, if you're creating a path in the woods and you've got like a machete and there's like branches that you've got to clear, you got to clear that stuff away so you can actually make it down the path. Who wants to chop branches all day long? Not fun sometimes, but it's what we need to do. So this could occur as uncomfortable depending on what's happened in your life. But sometimes it's pretty simple stuff, like a new baby came home. For me, my mother died. That was a big one in and of itself, but also we were going to babysitters a lot, even before she died. And my father didn't always pick us up. So I was 4 when she died. So let's say 2 years old, 3 years old. What happens? I'm at the babysitter and my dad doesn't come pick us up. I mean, he would call. It's not like we were sitting out on the porch with our coat on waiting and he never came. I don't mean that. I mean, the babysitter would say, your daddy's not going to come. You're going to sleep here tonight and he'll get you in the morning. But to my 3-year-old self, he does not love me. I feel abandoned. Didn't mean that at all, other than in my head. Are you guys with me? Are you mapping this onto something in your life?
100%.
Okay, awesome. That's the beauty of doing it as a workshop more than just, me for 5 minutes over a cup of coffee. Like, we could really dig in, and I want you to really see it for your life as well. Does anybody have something in their life that you want to share? And you don't have to, but I would write it down, capture this right now, like, oh, this was my something happened. Maybe you're in 2nd grade and a kid has a birthday party and you don't get invited. These days, I think they invite the whole class all the time, every time. But when I was little, we didn't do that. We had a birthday party that had maybe 5 kids. So if you heard about this kid having a birthday party and you were not one of the invites, that could be your something happened. Nobody likes me. It's in that moment, just like the generational messaging of you don't have control over your life. You need to give first in order to get something back. You need to, prove yourself useful, just like those generational messages. This is your itty bitty shitty committee message to yourself that now changes how you see yourself, because now life no longer feels so full. That's where you start to lose some of your wholeness. When you say to yourself, I guess nobody likes me. I must not be good enough if they need another baby in the house. You can't be whole when you're feeling that way about yourself. Can you? Because inherently in that message is there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. It's in that message. So if you're broken, you cannot ever feel whole. And if you never feel whole, you won't have peace. But it's all reversible. It's a constant reversing or a consistent reversing until you really get to see things just as a flower, the beautiful flower that they are, and not put a meaning on top of them. This is perhaps your first conversation about this concept, or your 10th, and maybe it takes 100 to actually like get it easy, move down the path without needing a machete anymore. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So in that moment, and this is how our brains work, this is the neural pathway rewiring. Something happens, we see it, we hear it, we, experience the event. We take in that data into our head. The brain's job is to interpret it. So the interpretation is the story. So they happen so simultaneously, it feels like they are the same thing. They're actually two different things. There's the what happened and the interpretation, but it's so fast, it feels like it's all the same. So it feels like the interpretation is what happened. It feels like nobody likes me is what actually happened. It feels like I must not be good enough. That's why you had another baby. That's what happened. It's not what happened. And then as we have that, it becomes the way that we see our life over and over, because we will keep seeing things the way we already believe them. So once we make that decision about ourselves, now we're going to see everything else as a match to that. We will interpret it to be a match in the same way, because that's also how your brain is wired. It's like a filing cabinet. It's going to go, so something happens. Somebody comes home, your husband comes home and says, I don't want to go out tonight. And your brain goes through the filing cabinet. If you haven't done the work to realize and to release some stuff, goes through the filing cabinet and says, that feels like not getting invited in second grade. He doesn't like me. Feels the same. All of a sudden, I feel the same way right now in my body. I feel like somebody kicked me in the stomach. And it becomes the I am in the middle. I am blank, fill in the blank. I am unlovable. I am not good enough. I am unworthy of better things, better relationships, better jobs, more happiness, whatever that is. That becomes the you that starts showing up. So remember a few slides back, I said there's two versions of you. There's the version that was born and is fully self-expressed and all the things. And then there's this version. And when the I am fill in the blank is coming from the itty bitty shitty committee, well, who would want to get out of bed? Who would want to keep taking the day on? If that's the I am that you're pulling into your day, right? Are you guys with me? But if you're pulling in the I am, like from when you were 2, which is the world is mine, I'm great, I deserve that, give me that, I don't feel good right now, I'm going to scream for a while, right? That's the 2-year-old version, but we can be that as grown-ups, in a more appropriate way, but we can be that. That version of you is still there. But who's showing up depends on how you're answering this or how you're filling this in, this I am. And if you're filling it in through a story and a meaning that is disempowering, that gives your authority away to somebody else, you're chipping away at your wholeness. Okay. So there are times in your life when you forget this life sentence. It becomes a life sentence. It becomes the context through which you see yourself. And then when we're choosing partners and somebody kind of expects us to do things for him or them, whatever, and we think, well, I'm not enough. Inherently, who I am for myself is I'm not enough. Well, then I'm happy enough to have this guy. At least I have this guy because I'm not really enough to get a different guy or a job. I remember being in a business group and I had never, so my whole life, my my jobs were always in wellness, but they weren't like corporate jobs, right? I was an adjunct professor, so I'm teaching classes, and I was a fitness trainer, and I had clients, but not a corporate job. And when I started to learn how to do things online, like how do I do that? I had never done that. So I put myself in a business group, and I'm in this small group and they're talking like they're using business terminology. Like, let me think of something. Bandwidth, which sounds so silly now because I know what it means, but like we don't have the bandwidth. You have to know if you have the bandwidth to support this in your business. Or CRM, which I still can't tell you what it means, but it's something about like your customer service, your customer relations, something, right? Your CRM. So I'm in this business thing and I've never had like a regular corporate kind of job, but I want to learn how to do business. And they're throwing around these terms, and in my head, I can't even pay attention because in my head, I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? Like I have no business being here. I can't do this. And I'm telling you, it all came from I'm not important enough for my daddy to pick me up at night. I'm not important enough. So there are times in our life when we've been able to step out of these life sentences. I say life sentence because they got created really young and we've been carrying them through our life. But these are the typical ones. So can you think of times when you had that version of you, maybe not when you're little, maybe more in your adult life, maybe it was before you got married and you were just doing your own thing. Maybe it was in a job and you were like leading a project and you really did it well and you felt like you were coming up with great ideas and people were acknowledging you. Maybe it was in raising your children and you just did something really great as a parent, like you really were sure of yourself. But what were you? What were your ways of being in those moments? You trusted yourself. So maybe if it was at a job and you know your stuff, right? You trust yourself and what you have to say. That's a way of being. You feel connected and you feel safe to share from your heart. When you are in that place, when you're being, it's a way of being. I'm not shut down and guarded and worried. I'm actually just saying what there is to say. I'm actually giving this presentation on this project and I know what I'm talking about. I'm actually at lunch with my girlfriends telling them about, I don't know, an anti-inflammatory diet. And I know what I'm talking about because I've been researching it and I've been eating that way and I feel differently. I can share this fully, be excited about it. I don't know, I'm making up examples, right? But when you're in that moment, not thinking about it, not worrying about it, expressing yourself, peace is present. Excitement is present. Maybe happiness is present or joy, but peace is definitely present because you know yourself fully the way you knew yourself when you first started your life. What questions do you guys have?
Mhm. Hmm. Wow.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So the access, and then I'm going to wrap this up, but your access to that, how do I do that? How do I consistently do that? You have to notice the old conversation, the old story, what we identified back when we looked at that, bam, what happened? You have to get practice at noticing it because it's always there in the background, and there might be more than one. Then you have to purposefully and mindfully return yourself to those three ways of being, expressing yourself. So you go, oh, there's the old story. Nobody likes me. I'm not good enough. There it is. That's from when I was in first grade. Let me purposely like take myself by the shoulders or by the head and return myself to I'm going to fully express myself. I'm going to say what I know to say. I'm not going to be worried about what other people think. I have to do that. Each and every time I notice the conversation, it's my job to do that. And we make it more and more accessible by working on and changing the neurological pathways of how we think. That's a good chunk of the work that I do with my clients in the Return to You program. And some of the clients are here, so they can attest to that, right? We do a lot of work on changing that. We do it together, and then you need to do it on your own at whatever amount you need to do it. And the last thing that I want to say is utilizing courage. Courage is always the portal to something that you want. Because if you're standing on the side of over here, and there's something that you want, a different outcome, a different thing in your life, a new job, something different in your relationship or a new relationship, fear always shows up. I'm going to stop sharing this so I could just talk to you guys without seeing little tiny windows. There you are. Fear always shows up because that's just part of being alive. Oh, I don't know about that. I haven't done that. I don't know if I can. There's going to be a little bit of fear. The access is always courage. You have to learn how to access courage as a portal. Use the portal to step through to get what you want. So courage is part of the whole thing. Recognizing those old conversations, purposefully pulling yourself into a new way of being, taking action. So if you have, and some of you might recognize this as an example, but if you have like, I feel separate from the group, I don't feel like I belong. Your job is to purposefully insert yourself in the group, like purposefully show up, purposefully reach out and connect. And that takes courage. But once you identify, it's not really anything real. It's not really anything real. How's that for a sentence? It's not anything real. It's what I created in my head. Because I don't know about you, but once I get that, it's like, oh, so it's just me and my own mind games. How much am I going to let my own mind games take over? How much am I going to let the society of 1,000 years ago tell me that I can't determine my own path because women didn't back then, but it's been passed down? And my mother and my grandmother think, no, 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 you can't do that. This is what you're supposed to do. It's the same thing. So any questions, any comments? Was this helpful? Let me ask you guys that. Was this helpful?
Mhm.
Extremely helpful. I'm very grateful to you for this.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Great. Well, I hope it was. You can ponder on it. You can go, you're going to get the recordings. You can go back through and maybe in your own time frame really look. And if you want more help, this is the work that I do. We do a lot of other stuff too. We do a lot of work on our nervous system and a lot of work on releasing old patterns emotionally. But this rewiring is a big chunk of it. So if you want to speak with me about that, that first slide has that QR code. You could just click that, and you could just send me an email, reach out to me on social media. I would love to connect with you. Okay? Okay, my friends, I'm going to say goodnight, and I will get this recording emailed to you tomorrow. If you're in the Healing Circle membership, you always have access. It never goes away. There's actually a workshop library. It just gets added to, and you can just watch all the workshops in there. If you're not in the Healing Circle, you get access to it for like 3 or 4 days, and then you lose it probably by the end of the weekend. And then the Healing Circle coaching call is next week on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. So you can bring questions about this to that call if you want to, or about anything else. Okay? All right. I don't know what time it is where you all are, but good night from me.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Kath.